Hi, it's Rebecca Mara. I have a couple doggies playing in the background here. But I wanted to make this video anyway and tell you about why talk therapy does not work on its own a lot of the time. I think that talk therapy is great, and I think a lot of people like to do talk therapy. But working with the somatics is really, really important when it comes to trauma therapy or any kind of nervous system regulation. So, one way to explain the difference between talk therapy and somatic work is that talk therapy is engaging the neocortex. So, that's the thinking, analytic, problem solving part of our brain. It's the part that can create meaning or stories. And it's the part that can kind of report what's happening. One thing that happens is that in talk therapy, by telling the story or going over the same problem or event over and over again, you can actually be hardwiring the negative pattern in your brain over and over again, so your body continues to respond with stress or anxiety or the feeling that you came into therapy to try to process. Now, there are definitely benefits to it, especially things like cognitive behavioral therapy or DBT, because they help you come to terms with things or to make sense of things. And what I appreciate the most about the cognitive part of this is that I don't know how that just happened. I just saw a thumbs up. What I appreciate the most about the cognitive part of this work is that it helps you create a different meaning, right? So there is a school of thought that's post-traumatic growth, and that helps you create a meaning that is empowering from any given experience. So if it's if someone felt mistreated by their dad or something like that, they can create a new meaning from that experience where it's like, you know what, I just decided that love is the most powerful thing, or this experience helped me become a stronger, more aware person. It's a story of empowerment, a story of resilience. And so that's where it's really important to use the mental channel in order to process some things. But it does seem like, aside from being able to reframe something or create new meaning, to be able to figure something out, or using your mind, your analytical mind, to decide on a behavioral change, aside from that, sometimes it is not that helpful for people. So it can feel really good to talk to someone in the moment, and it's great to have someone to talk to about things that you are uncomfortable with talking about with anyone else in your life. Like, it's so great to have a therapeutic container where the space is just for you and you can share or process whatever is alive for you in that moment. It can help to be able to talk something out, for sure. And again, what I appreciate about that is being able to reframe a situation, to create a behavioral change that helps you take some kind of proactive action that helps resolve a situation. So also just the post-traumatic growth aspect of it, where you get to ask yourself, how do I make this an empowering story for myself? Or how do I shift this belief that isn't serving me, that I automatically came up with when I was a little kid? How can I shift that belief into something that's the opposite of that is more of an empowering belief, and a belief that helps me feel better about myself? So those are the things that I think are most helpful about talk therapy, which is also called top down. So top down is being able to use your mind in order to create change in your world. One thing about the top-down approach is that neocortex, using the neocortex, you can create change in your body sometimes. So if you can use your neocortex to voluntarily affect how your body is feeling, whether it's pain or anxiety, depression, those are the most common things, stress, you can use your neocortex to tell your body, I'm safe, I'm okay, I'm here with you, I love you, and things that can help your body relax. The thing is that your body has to get the message, so it has to move from that top down, from that mental place into your body, so it's integrated. Now, my work and my passion is working with the somatics and working with trauma healing through the body. So all of the information that's getting processed in our system, out of all of it, 20% of it is from our head, and 80% of the information that we're getting is actually from our body, which is wild. I know everyone's read a lot now about how important the gut is, and that the gut actually can create or affect how we feel more than the brain even, it's pretty fascinating, right? And if you think about the gut itself, there's a microbiome, but in somatics, one of the most important things to understand is how important our vagus nerve is. So I'll get to that in a little bit. The vagus nerve controls parasympathetic, the rest and digest, or the sympathetic, which is activation. Usually when there's stress or do or overwhelm, anxiety, the fight mode, fight flight, all of that is sympathetic activation. And a lot of times for most people, that is in overdrive. And then we have the parasympathetic part of our autonomic nervous system. And the parasympathetic is the rest and digest, right? It's like when our body knows we're in a state of safety, we don't have to go into fight, flight, or freeze. So the parasympathetic is that more calm, more present, and also it allows us to have more curiosity, and it allows us to have more of a sense of connection. The downside of the parasympathetic can be when there's been too much fight or flight energy for too long, like too much stress for too long, or just a really overwhelming event that would cause us to go into shutdown. And that's like a sense of numbness, flatness, depression, lethargy, and that's only after the nervous system has given up and the fight or flight or freeze is not working. So that's just a little bit about the nervous system, how important it is with somatic work. But it's so cool to understand how our body evolved to survive. If you look at animals, if they're running from a predator, they have to they try to run, right? There's the flight. And if they can't get away, then they have to fight. That's kind of like the next thing. And if they can't fight, then they go into freeze and they play dead, because sometimes animals will not attack if you play dead, right? Or you can't be seen because you're in this freeze state. But after that, you shake it off, right? Like they run, they discharge that energy. But as humans, we are, because of this prefrontal cortex or this neocortex, we are conditioned to not behave in weird ways, right? So we don't growl, we don't just run in the moment, we don't just punch each other. So we're conditioned to not discharge energy in a way that an animal would, and that's where we get sick, and that's where we feel anxiety and depression and chronic illness and stuff like that. That's why we go to therapy, because that charge is still living in the body, right? Like that discomfort, that stress. Our body doesn't know how to purge it with our cognitive minds. Animals would be able to process these events a lot faster. So, what is most important to me during a somatic session or somatic trauma healing session is bringing resource. Like that's number one in any healing modality. It's resource, 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 resource. And when we are resourced enough and we feel safe enough, we feel loved enough, we feel like there's attunement, we feel like someone cares about us and they want to hear what we're saying, when what's happening for us is important, when there's just that feeling of safety and being held, and also the ability to resource yourself, right, outside of the therapeutic container, being able to love yourself, to help bring your nervous system down when it gets really escalated and it gets stuck in one of these modes. So resourcing is everything, right? Like all of our, look at these guys, all of our issues come from, in my opinion, not being loved enough, especially not being safe enough, and not being seen or attuned to, right? So when we have secure attachment and we have healthy bonds that give people a resilient nervous system, those children feel like they're important to their parent. They feel safe enough, they feel loved enough, and they feel like their thoughts or feelings matter to that attachment figure. And we can find that later on in our present relationships, and that's super important as well. But when there's that secure attachment and all of those good resourcing qualities in relationships, our nervous systems are way more calm and regulated and healthy, and we're more resilient. Like we can handle situations more easily, and we're less likely to have chronic stress or anxiety or depression. They're playing a lot. I like having them in my videos. So in somatic work, we're emphasizing resource, right? Like we're really allowing the resource to happen, and we're getting it not just cognitively, because I can tell you, you're okay, you're safe, and you're like, yeah, I'm okay, I'm safe, right? This is why affirmations don't work unless they're embodied. But unless your body gets that sense of safety and you learn how to really feel those sensations in your body and you know how to get there, you're not going to be able to heal, right? Like for a moment you might be like, oh, okay, I'm safe. But the body really, really needs to learn how to anchor in safety in order for us to heal. So that comes down to, there can be images of receiving receiving the energy or the resource that was needed in the moment. So, let's say you had an alcoholic father or something like that. It's always funny trying to come up with like examples. I'm like, well, let's just go with that one. But let's say you had an alcoholic father, and if we're coming into a place of resource or finding a resource, we can sometimes use an image where it might be something like that there was a really loving protector in the room that got to speak up for you, right? Because if you had an alcoholic father, you would not have a voice, right? You would not be able to express your own anger or sadness, because you could have a violent response, whether it's emotional or physical. So, we use the imagination channel of like what was needed in that moment, like what would have helped you feel safe, what can we bring to you right now with the residual impact that's had on you? Is it like just really being able to feel like your voice matters, like you're going to be protected, that there's no threat here, right? So those are some images, like I think of protector for that particular situation, that there's like a really loving protector that can stand and be like, no, you can't do this, my child is precious. Or just like a really loving, sometimes I go to spirit guides. It's like, imagine that, God is there, this really loving spirit guide that's just there, that lets you know that no matter what happens, you're loved and safe. So there's that. And then there's also, the words that are helpful of like, you're so loved. And then being able to take that in, like, what would it feel like? Maybe I don't even know what that feels like, but what would it feel like if I knew I was so loved? like, let's tune in, really, really slow that down and feel it in the body. And with trauma, what happened was, again, too much, too fast, right? And so when we're doing healing work and trauma work, somatic work, so loud. When we're doing somatic work, we're being as present as possible, because attunement and presence and slowness means that there's connection there, right? We're not just in our heads talking to each other. That means someone's really with us in that moment, and that creates a sense of safety. There's also a place of mindfulness that we can approach the space with. And to me, mindfulness is, in a sense, more somatic, because the nervous system has to be regulated in order to be in a mindful state. It's like we have to slow everything down so that we really notice the subtle. And with mindfulness, there's space for curiosity and non-judgment around what's not happening, or whatever's happening, or whatever we're talking about. There's an openness and a spaciousness, a curiosity, and that allows us to have choice with how we respond to something. That mindfulness can help us be like, oh yeah, my brain's doing that thing again. Yeah, my mind is doing the negative commentary, or my mind is going like, yeah, I don't feel good. And then that mindfulness allows us the space to take a moment and to observe our own systems. It allows us to come into awareness so that there is enough spaciousness for us to create a new choice. One of the biggest things is it's finding, when you're dysregulated, a place in your body that feels okay. Like, there's always some place in the body that feels okay. And it could be, especially lower in the body. It could be like feeling your hips and the chair. Or it could be, a little bit higher, just feeling the softness of your heart. And in somatics, you're really lingering there. You're not going like, oh, what feels good? Oh, my heart feels good. Yeah, I think my heart feels good. And then you move on. Like, we're not doing that. We're hanging out with the positive sensation for as long as it takes for you to really feel it and to really anchor it. Because we want to program that somatic memory in your body so you can find that sensation again, right? It helps to kind of have one anchor that you keep practicing, where it's like, oh yeah, my heart is just a resource for me. It feels soft, it feels safe. So that helps with the negativity bias of the brain. The brain is always going to be looking for threat and what isn't good, like what isn't working. And we have to really slow things down in order to, I'm going to say, impregnate our nervous systems with the awareness that something good is there and available at any time. We really want to create that memory and to slow things down so much that it can feel like an altered state sometimes, but it's a place in your nervous system that maybe you're familiar with, but a lot of times it's a positive experience that you didn't even know existed. So it's really beautiful to be able to find those places in the sensation body. So with everything, whatever therapy you're doing, if you're doing talk therapy, everything has to come from a place of resource, right? And then you can work into metabolizing the difficult material. And that's what trauma therapy is having a space that's safe enough and slow enough that you can metabolize physically the uncomfortable sensations so that the nervous system can complete its response of activation from that fight, flight, freeze, shutdown place. You're allowing it to cycle through and process that experience without doing it cognitively. The content doesn't really matter. The content's not that important. But what is important is like being able to create that sense of safety in the body and to access that memory without it being too much, without overwhelm, but it's allowing the body to process it. So in somatic therapy and trauma healing, you might be moving in and out of that place of resource, and then processing that really challenging experience through sensation in the body, and then bringing resource to it. And then you're with that challenging experience again until it's the charge around whatever happened is dissipated. And that's what we're going for, is like being able to feel that the charge around something is dissipated, and there's more of an okayness, right? Like, oh, it feels like that experience is complete for me now. And then you can bring in more of that cognitive reframe where you're like, oh, I'm okay, right? Like, this happened, but I don't feel that fear or that anger or that, that terror, that sadness anymore. Like, I'm here right now and I'm okay. It also does help to orient and just kind of come back to the present moment, where you're like, you're able to look around, like physically look around and sense that in this moment, I'm here right now and I'm okay. Like, there's some beautiful flowers right there. There's some plants that I like. The lighting is beautiful. If I feel my hand here feels soft on my chest. So that's kind of, orienting with your senses. And it can be orienting too, and just kind of noticing like, oh yeah, actually I have a lot of good things in my life. Like, I have great people in my life. I have work that I love. Or it could be like, I get to hike on nature trails every day. Like, I get to go to yoga, and that's a place where I restore and connect to myself. So it's kind of cool, because when the body starts processing things, you'll notice purges. And a lot of this has to do with vagus nerve, right? And you'll notice, like, all of a sudden, I just had a client and she was holding herself, and I was like, you could even rock back and forth a little bit. And I noticed her shoulders drop down just naturally, right? And she took a nice breath, and just naturally, right? So that's a purge. Sometimes when something's really intense, like, a client will like belch, or, there are all kinds of different purges that show us that that the nervous system is getting regulated. When I'm doing table work, I have my hands on people's bellies a lot, because I'm working with the vagus nerve there. And it'll start gurgling right away, because it's going into rest and digest. And I just hang out until it stops gurgling, because I know that sympathetic activation has gone into a place where the body's safe enough to come back into to connection, into, it gets to complete its defensive responses. There's nothing that it needs to defend. And then we can access our creativity, right? We can access our ability to connect through that. It's called the dorsal vagal part of the nervous system, which has more to do with connection and safety. So that's something that like lights up our face, our expression feels open, our heart feels soft. That's a place where there's connection. And that's a place where we can be curious, we can play, and all of that. So I hope that this was helpful for you, and just kind of painting a picture of why somatics are so important. And again, we have the top-down talk therapy, which is what almost everybody knows, but most people don't understand the importance of the somatics, which is the bottom-up, right? Body to mind, in order to get ourselves out of a state of depression or anxiety. There's so much that you can't talk your way through. The body has to come into a sense of safety, and it has to be able to metabolize challenging experiences in order to dissipate that. So thank you so much for watching this video. I really enjoyed making it, and I felt motivated and inspired when I made this. And the main somatic healing practice and trauma healing practice that I do is called somatic experiencing, which I think is the number one trauma therapy, trauma healing, trauma resolution work that exists for sure. It was developed by Peter Levine, and it's just incredible what's possible when we're journeying through the body. So if you would like to do an online session with me or in-person session, I would love to be of assistance. And if this video felt helpful to you, please feel free to subscribe to my channel or to even comment and ask any question that you have. And I am sending you lots of love. Okay.